Thank you, Scott, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today. The webinar today is focused on the SuperDoor admin tools, so let's take a walk through the agenda. We'll start off with a brief demo of the SuperDoor tool in case there are people on this webinar who are seeing SuperDoor for the first time today. After that, we'll move right along to the admin tools and look at how to get up and running with SuperDoor for the first time, how to customize the database by adding new parameters to the content or adding new content. And finally, we'll look at how to configure SuperDoor for a multi-user environment. After getting through the tool set, we'll take a look at our upcoming webinars and events, and then we'll wrap up our webinar with a live question and answer session. As Scott mentioned, submit any questions you have over the course of the webinar via the control panel. So let's talk quickly about why we built the SuperDoor Configurator Tool in the first place. SuperDoor is a product that we've actually had available for about 6 years now, and it was previously available as just a content package only. And over the through interacting with our customers on this, the number one piece of feedback that we got was that SuperDoor was was a great package, but there was somewhat of a steep learning curve associated with actually getting into building new family types. And so because of that, we opted to go ahead and pair a software with the SuperDoor content, which is going to really help automate all of the complicated parts about getting SuperDoor to work, and at the same time it's going to help push standards out with the SuperDoor content. So and we'll take a look at the actual assembly in Revit, but what this is going to do is basically a step-by-step interface to go through and create a new door. So you'll first pick an assembly which drives the door type. Is it a sliding door? Is it a swing door? Is it a double door? Once you've picked that, you'll go ahead and choose your frame, then your panel. And then the fourth step, you have an option to configure any of the parameters that exist within that door family. So you can change things like the width, or in the example here, you can do things like configure an ADA clearance for that door. The last step is going to be to verify the naming convention that you want to use, and then go ahead and load that object into, or that door into your project, or save it out to a library for later use. So let's toggle over to Revit and just take a quick spin through the SuperDoor interface. We'll just draw a wall so we have something to put the door into when we're done. And I'm going to go ahead and fire up the SuperDoor tool here. So again, just a brief introduction. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the different options in here, but basically what I can do is if I want to configure a new door, perhaps I'll do a sliding door here, I can just double click on this door and work my way through selecting the frame and the panel that I want to use. And in here I have the option to configure what I want my parameter values to be for this door. Once this is done, we'll move on to the Create Door tab. And here, some pre-configured values from the database are going to be pulled into the interface to build both the door name and the type name for this door. And it's going to do things like pull in the size value and pull in some of these abbreviations from each of the components. So in this case, I selected an AL00 frame, so that gets pulled in the name, and then a full glass panel. So again, I'm seeing that in my naming convention. So one of the things we're going to look at first when we get into the admin tool is how we can customize these names to perhaps match a company standard that's already in place. So at this point, I'll go ahead and finish the door. It's going to take a moment while it gathers up the families that I selected, nests them together, and loads it into the project. And I had a little hiccup there. Yeah, we'll go back and grab a different door here. Let's grab the bifold double. Great, so we'll finish this up. Forgive me, I was playing with my database this morning and I think I need to clean it up just a little bit. All right, great. So there's my configured door. We'll go ahead and place that bifold double. And so that's basically the workflow with SuperDoor. You select your components, work your way through the interface, and then you're able to go ahead and actually place that configured door. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the admin interface. So the admin tool again is used to change the configuration or change the settings that are used by the SuperDoor tool. So what we're seeing here is some organization. First of all, we've got 3 tabs that control the assemblies, the frames, and the panels. So, and underneath each of these tabs, you'll see all of the different families that we have available through SuperDoor. We are going to get back in here and dig through the rest of these settings, like the data settings and all these other options here. But what I want to highlight first is this download SuperDoor families. And what I'm actually going to do is close the admin tool, and we're going to go ahead and basically set my computer up as though I had never run SuperDoor before. Make this a first run of the program. So I'm just going to take these files here and cut them and just paste them out on my desktop as if I had not downloaded the content yet. And so what that will do is when I launch the admin tool, you're going to see here that the list of content on each of these tabs is blank. And so this is what you'll see on first run of SuperDoor. The reason is we bundled our content up separately so that if we have updates to the tool itself or updates to the content, you're not having to deal with replacing both of them simultaneously. So we can either push out a content update or we can push out a software update. So tried to make it as non-invasive as possible. So the flip side is we do need to download this content to get started. So once the tool is licensed, this option will become available. If your software has not been licensed yet, this will simply pop up a dialog telling you need to license your tool first. So, but we'll go ahead and click on this, and what it's going to do is link you out to our website where you're able to go ahead and download this content. So I can click this download button now, and it's going to give me a zip file that contains the content. So instead of actually downloading this, we'll just go ahead and copy back from my desktop. Oops. So we'll grab our panels, assemblies, and frames, cut those, and we're going to put them right back into the SuperDoor folder. This folder is located on by default on the C drive. So C, program data, CTC, SuperDoor. And then you'll see different folders for the different content versions. So we do support having multiple versions of this tool installed on the same machine at the same time. So we'll go ahead and paste these in. Let me just verify that my content is here. All right, great. So once you've downloaded the content and you've put it into the folder that SuperDoor expects to find it in, at this point when I launch the admin tool again, I'm going to go ahead and see all of those content items in here. All right, just a quick note before we dive into anything else, there are a couple other files out in that folder structure that I want to bring to your attention. So there are two files here for each version. So there's a SuperDoor settings file and then the SuperDoor data file. The data file is where all of the configuration data gets stored for SuperDoor, and the settings file is used to point users' SuperDoor software to the location which it can find the SuperDoor data file. So we'll circle back around to this towards the end of the webinar when we talk about deploying SuperDoor, because basically what we'll be doing is putting these files in specific locations. All right. So in order to use a piece of content in SuperDoor, it must first be configured. So let's just take a brief look at what it means to have a piece of content be configured. And you'll see though that's indicated by this configured checkbox on the right. So let's go ahead and open up the single door definition here. And we're going to kind of poke around in here and look at what the options are that are available. We're going to come back through this with a practical example shortly after we're done looking at this interface here. So we will come back through and actually use all these settings. So within this dialog here, I have the option to supply a number of different things. First of all, here is the seed name. This is that name part that gets pulled into the naming convention at the on the last step of the SuperDoor configuration tool. So for any company who wants to take the SuperDoor product and customize it to work with their own naming convention, the first thing they'll need to do is come into the admin interface and work through each piece of door content and just change the naming convention used. So below that, you're going to see a list of parameters available for this particular piece of content. And you'll see that some of these are color-coded yellow and others are white. The yellow parameters have been configured to show up in the SuperDoor interface on the parameter selection screen. The white ones are things that we omitted. They're still going to be included in the family definition when it gets loaded into the project, but there were things that we didn't feel were necessary to actually configure with our tool. So the way this works is you'll select a parameter. Let's go ahead and select this angle parameter. And with a parameter selected, you can go ahead and choose what display group you want it to show up in. So back in the configuration tool, there are actually three levels of organization for your parameters. And so this is how those parameters get associated to those levels of organization. You select the parameter and tell it what grouping to show up in. Below that, we have description options. So we can describe what the parameter actually does. You have an option to supply minimum or maximum values or also at the bottom, you have the ability to enforce specific values. So here that's being done for this angle parameter. Through our tool, users can only choose to create a 45-degree or a 90-degree variant. So additional options can be added for the enforce specific values by clicking the plus to the right. So in here, I can add an additional value to be displayed. One feature that's not utilized out of the box, but you're welcome to use if it suits your particular need, is you actually have the ability to specify preview images per value type. So if you wanted to show how a frame, for example, changes size as you're adjusting, you would be able to supply additional preview images in here that would then change as users make selections. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first customization item. We're going to go ahead and close out of this. Say, no, we don't want to save the changes. And we'll close out of the admin interface. What I'm going to do is go ahead and just open up one of my door families. And the example that we're going to use today is actually look at how we would add an additional parameter to the families used by SuperDoor. So let me just navigate out here and grab one of these family files. And in this case, let's go ahead and we'll keep using this the single door. Open it up. And so a very simple example, the first thing we're going to do here is just go ahead and add a parameter. And so one of the things that we've heard people request a couple of times is how would I create a door, or how would I add a parameter to use a door as a unit door? So anybody doing repetitive geometry or repetitive room type projects, or multifamily residential type stuff, or hotels, or anything where there's a reusable space. Lots of people like to group those doors as a unit door so that they're able to schedule just that unit door definition once. So in order to do that, we want to have basically a yes/no parameter option to categorize a door as a unit door. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add a parameter in here. I'm just going to say, we'll just call it unit door. And obviously we'd want this to be a shared parameter. This is just as an example to get it into the database though. So we'll go ahead and choose the type of parameter to be yes, no. And I'm going to go ahead and group this parameter under, let's do identity data. All right, great. So we've added this new parameter. We'll go ahead and hit OK. We'll apply this change. And I'm going to go ahead and save my family. So once that's done, we can close out of the family file and go back into the SuperDoor admin tool. And at this point, when I rerun the configuration option for my single door, what we'll do when we open it is basically reparse the family file to find out what parameters exist in the family. So as we scroll down here and we look under identity data, we're now going to have this unit door option. So this is that new parameter we just added. So let's go ahead and take this unit door and assign it to one of the groups within the SuperDoor. So we'll go ahead and assign this to the options group. So at this point I can go ahead and hit OK. And that parameter is now configured for that door. So let's close out of here and we'll run through the single door and show how we can now access that parameter in the configuration tool. So here we'll grab the swing door. Perhaps we'll just grab an HM02 and a flush panel. And as I work through here now, I've got my dimensions group, my graphics, but on options, I should now see whether or not this is a unit door. Oh, now that I get back in here, I wonder if I didn't save my database. Let me just take one quick look back in here. That's what I did. I didn't save it. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. We're going to save our data here. Great. Close out. Run through SuperDoor one more time, and let's take a look at that new option. There we go. Unit door, yes or no. So now we can configure this property as part of the SuperDoor configuration tool. So fairly straightforward. Once the parameter exists, or once the changes have been made to that door family, you're able to come back through and choose where you want that to show up in the configuration tool. And then once you've saved your database, you'll be able to actually see those changes live. All right. So the next example I want to run through is how to actually take the existing content of SuperDoor and modify it for some other purpose. So one of the things you might want to do, we had a firm that did this, was they took our SuperDoor content, but they wanted to have borrowed light families to be able to use, on the inside of the building. And so what they did was they basically took, we'll emulate this process here. So we're going to go ahead and grab our single door, and I'm actually just going to copy and paste it right into the same directory here. Get rid of this guy here. We'll rename this guy. And I'm just going to call this door borrowed light. All right. I'm also going to go ahead and copy one of my frames. So let's grab the HM00 frame. We'll copy this, paste it, rename it, and we're just going to call this BL. Great. Now that we have those copied, what we can do is go back into the admin tool. And when we come in here, one of the first things the admin tool does is it parses those folders that it's looking to for its content to find out what exists in that folder. So when I hit OK here and we expand this out a little bit, you can see I now have a borrowed light family showing up in my database. Also on the Frames tab, I'm going to have this BL option. And both of these you can see are not configured. So what we're going to have to do is work through the process of configuring these families so that they can appear in the SuperDoor as options. Now, one quick thing before we do this, we are actually going to modify that frame family so it looks more like a borrowed light. So let's go ahead and open it up. And we'll just make a quick modification to it. SuperDoor. And so from the interior, let's go ahead and we're just going to kind of hack this here, but we're going to edit this extrusion and have this extend all the way across the bottom. Now, of course, I'd probably want to actually add reference planes to control these things and lock all of my geometry, but for the purpose of this demonstration, we'll keep it simple and just go ahead and edit that extrusion to go across the bottom. So at this point, we'll go ahead and finish our extrusion edit, and we'll save our family, close it out, and let's go ahead and work through configuring this new frame to be used as a borrowed light. We have this nice little pop-up that'll tell you, do you want to, basically indicating where you can download the SuperDoor content as a visual cue for anybody running it the first time. Okay, so on my Frames tab, here I have my borrowed light frame. Let's go ahead and open this up. And again, the typical process here is to go through and configure each one of these parameters that I would like to use within my project. So I would come in here and choose my height, tell it I want it to be on the Dimensions tab. From here, I'm able to select an image. The images that we add are going to be pulled basically out of the database. So as I select this, it's going to bring up a browse option. So in here, I can go through and I can find the image to go along with that particular parameter. And so we do have multiple height parameters options for you, basically so you can match up the image to the door type. So I'm just going to grab this one for now, even though this doesn't match. So we can choose height. So and as I click away now, you can see that this has been configured. I'm still able to go through and add a description to this if I want. But what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to take a shortcut. And this is probably something you would want to do anyhow. It's going to save you a lot of time, as I'm able to actually reload one of the configurations from one of my other families into this as a head start. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to load existing configuration from this option up here. And I'm going to go ahead and select the HM00 that I copied this from. So there are some options in here. Do I want to include the parameter image assignments, which I absolutely do. And then there's another option here to remove excess parameter values. So if you had removed a parameter in the edit between, instead of storing those values in the database so that they could be reused if you decided to add that in the future, this would allow you to just strip those out of the database. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So here we have now pre-configured this frame to basically match the settings from our HM00. So at this point, it did overwrite my seed name and my description, so I'm going to want to change these. This is now a borrowed light, and this we'll just call this a borrowed light frame option. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit OK, and we'll save our database here. And I'm going to move back to the SuperDoor assemblies, and now let's work through the process of configuring that borrowed light in here. So we'll go ahead and grab this, and again, I'm probably just going to go ahead and load the existing configuration, and we'll steal from the single door again. So I'll hit OK. And that'll give us that head start, so we don't have to go through every single parameter. From here, we'll call this the borrowed light. Borrowed light. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to tell this family what the compatible frames and panels are. And this is very important. This is one of those things that when you were using the content as just a standalone content package, we really didn't have a great way to restrict which panels and frames could be used with which door assemblies. So there was no reason whatsoever you couldn't use a roll-up door in a revolving door frame in our previous configuration. Because Revit simply didn't supply us with enough intelligence to say which were applicable to which. So, but with the configuration tool, we are able to add that level of intelligence. So when we come in here to choose compatible frames, I'm going to go ahead and do a check none. Oops, check none. And then we'll come through and we'll say that this is only utilizable with the borrowed light frame. We can hit OK. And at the same time, since this is going to be a borrowed light, again, I don't want to actually use a panel. And so what I'm going to do is select the no panel option as the only option for this particular family. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. At this point, I'd probably want to come through and do some cleanup. So I would remove things like the swing angle, and I'd set that to hidden because that's not going to be applicable in this case. So there would be some additional cleanup that I would want to do to make this as tidy as possible when running through the configuration tool. But for time's sake, let's just go ahead and accept this. So I'm going to hit OK, save our database, and let's go back through the SuperDoor tool. So when I launch SuperDoor now, I should have a borrowed light option, which I do. So, and my preview image is no good. It's the same one from my swing door, so I would want to update that as well. But I can go through now and select my borrowed light. And in here, oops, looks like we had one hanging out. I must have missed it. In here, we can go ahead and grab the BL frame and then the no panel option. So from there, I'm able to go through and configure my parameters again, just as we were before. And at this point, I can go ahead and choose to create the door. So this is going to be the naming convention it pulls in. So let's go ahead and finish this. And so it's built up my new door. And we'll just take a quick look in 3D. So you can see it's got that frame that runs across the bottom. Clearly you can see I did kind of a rush job on this. I didn't match up the inside of the frame. But that's the general idea. So you're able to take the existing SuperDoor content and modify it to match whatever needs you might have. And from there, you're able to run that stuff back through the admin tool and make those available to your teams. So the last thing that I want to talk about here is actually how we're going to deploy SuperDoor in a multi-user environment. So back in the admin tool, one of the things we have here is the options dialog. Or, excuse me, that's actually not what I want. One of the things we have here is the data settings dialog. In the data settings dialog, I'm able to tell this particular database where it should look for its content files. So it's pointing to that main folder, and then the folder structure underneath that has to be maintained for the software to work. So looking at how we would configure this for a multi-user environment, what I would do is take the SuperDoor content folder, basically this whole 2015 content folder. I'm going to copy this, and we would paste this out on a network drive somewhere. So let's just pick on our training drive here. So I would probably have, an actual folder for my Revit family content. You can put this right in with your library of family files, but it's just going to need to stay in the same folder structure here. So let me just paste this over. We'll wait for it to copy. All right, so now I've got my content out on a network drive. It's on my X drive. And so what I can do here is we'll just go back into the SuperDoor tool. And instead of pointing to the C drive, I'm going to tell it to point to the X drive. So it's looking to X content 2015. I'm going to hit OK. So now this database, and this is a database level setting, this particular database now is going to be looking to that directory to find its content folders. So from here, I can go ahead and let's save this database. All right, I can close this. And now what I can do is take that database as well. Excuse me, we'll shortcut out here. Grab that SuperDoor database. Let's copy that, and I'm going to put that on my X drive as well, right next to the content files. So I've got my SuperDoor database and my content files on that same drive. And from here now, when I go into the actual configuration tool, I can tell this file where to look to find its database. So right now it's still pointing to my C drive, but let me go ahead and browse. We'll go to the X drive and we'll grab that database file. So at this point, it's going to go ahead and remember to path out to the X drive. So when I hit OK here, so now we're pointing entirely out to the X drive. And some of you administrator types might be sitting there going, I don't want to do that on every single machine. And that's where that last settings file comes into play. So back here on SuperDoor, I've got this 2015 settings file. And what this does is point this particular installation to where it should be looking to find its database file. And so what you'd want to do is, as you're deploying our software, you would want to also have a script to copy out the settings file to your end users. At the same time you're copying out that settings file, what you might also want to do is control who has access to the SuperDoor admin tool. Anybody who has access to the admin tool will be able to make changes within the database. So from a BIM management standpoint, if you want to, you would probably want to limit the group of people who have access to that database. And so the way you can do that, we actually have several different methods, and I'll show you a few of them here. The first one is just going through suite settings. So this would be done on sort of a onesie-twosie basis. I can come through and I can choose not to show the content manager, or this is the admin tool, so not to show the admin tool or suite settings to this particular user. So when I save this, it's going to tell me, yep, I can't access suite settings, that's fine. I say yes. When I save this, the next time I launch Revit, I will only see the SuperDoor tool. I will no longer have access to the admin tool or suite settings. So if you're a smaller shop and you only have a few machines, this might be the easiest way to do it. It's just to run through suite settings, uncheck those two checkboxes for the user, hit OK, and then the next time they launch it, they'll only see the configuration tool. Some other options for this, as we get up to scaling up to larger organizations, is in the content folder. So this is, in our add-ins folder. So if you go to add-ins 2015, we have a SuperDoor Suite Bundle folder. And within this folder exists a ribbon button visibility settings text file. This is the file that we were just modifying through the SuperDoor, or through the suite settings interface. So if I come in here, it's fairly straightforward. What this settings file will do is show the user any tool that exists here. So previously, before I had changed those settings, the way this looked was it actually had a line item for each of the other options. So I had suite settings available and I had the content manager available. You can either delete these, as the tool will do for you, or we can just pound these guys out. So we'll add the pound symbol, and next time this comes through, or next time this suite is loaded, once I save this text file, again, this would turn off visibility for these two items. So I can save this. And again, since this is a text file, this is something that's easily deployable with a script. So you can push this out to users' machines as part of the installation, and that way they'll just automatically not have those buttons available to them. We do have a third option, which I'm not going to run through today, but I will run through in one of our next webinars, which is the ability to control the visibility of any of our buttons on the toolbar via Active Directory. So you can use Active Directory groups to control who sees which icons. And so again, I'm not going to run through that today, but we will be taking a look at that in a future webinar. So the last thing that you may want to deploy along with our these several files we just talked about would be the licensing. So there's actually a license file. So in the CTC folder, there is a licensing, and these are the license settings for any one of our suites. So in this case, the SuperDoor 2015 suite, if you wanted to deploy, for example, network floating licensing, we can tell this file what the license type is, so network floating, and we can give it the path to your network floating license server, so that when users launch the application, they're automatically licensed, they're automatically only seeing the one button, and they're pointing to the right location for all of their content. Well, great. That pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show, and I think I blew off the bulk of my PowerPoint here. Breeze through this quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. So just as a review, we went through downloading the families, we looked at the folder locations that SuperDoor cares about, and the file structure used. We've gone through the admin interface and looked at changing the naming convention by modifying that seed name value, by changing the parameter behavior, and adding custom parameters, and then adding custom content. And then lastly, we looked at deployment. So centralizing the SuperDoor content and database by putting it out on a network drive, and then modifying the user settings and the licensing options for the smoothest user experience on the first launch. So with that said, anybody who adopted our SuperDoor software immediately on the first release, we did have an updated version. So the latest version now is 5.0.4. So if you want to make sure you're on the latest version, just go ahead and launch any one of the SuperDoor dialogues and choose the About, and that will show you this installed suite version. And if you're not on 5.0.4, you can go ahead and choose Download Latest Suite Installer, and that will bring you out to our web page where it will not only tell you the latest version, but have the option to go ahead and download it. Also, today's demo was actually conducted in Revit 2015. Our SuperDoor product is available for Revit 2015, as is our Manager Suite. Our project suite should be coming soon within the next couple of weeks if all things go well. We do have some upcoming events. Definitely look for us at RTC, the Revit Technology Conference. It's in Chicago this year. And we have several webinars coming up. So on May 28th, we have a webinar covering administering the Revit Express tools, which will go through everything from how you actually run the deployment to utilizing those Active Directory options, the various settings, and how to handle updates as our tool updates. On June 11th, we're going to have a webinar covering our BIMless product, which is our content management solution for Revit. Basically a tool to help you find, organize, and access your family files. And then on June 25th, we're going to have a webinar covering Revit Express tools for content management. So we're going to look through many of the common issues that we have heard from various BIM managers with the firms we work with, and talk about how the Revit Express tools can play into the content management role and help make your job easier. So with that said, I'll go ahead and turn this back over to Scott, we'll go through the live question and answer session here. So Scott, did you want to run through some of the first questions?
Looks like we have a question. They want to know if they can also use metric values in SuperDoor.
Yes, absolutely you can. The values that you'll see in the SuperDoor admin interface are going to be driven by what the project units are in Revit. And then from the SuperDoor configuration side, there is an option in here to choose what unit you would like to be pulled in when we're actually naming the type. So you can choose centimeters or millimeters for your unit type, and then that will drive the rest of the SuperDoor process. Good question.
Also, if I've added a parameter to multiple families using Family Processor, is there a way to bulk edit the group visibility, or do you have to step through each door in the admin configuration?
So the way I would probably handle that is by, again, utilizing that the copy settings option to go through and copy those settings from one door to another. But if that's not going to work for you, then yes, you would have to go through each piece of content. We do not have a bulk add option.
Okay, and we'll stay on the line here for more questions, but this is the last one we have so far. They're wondering, how do I create the custom images that match the doors I add to SuperDoor?
Another great question. All of the settings that we used to create the images that you'll see in the SuperDoor configuration tool, all of the settings are outlined actually in our user guide. So as you're working through the user guide, there are settings there to control, what the DPI was, what text we used, and so basically you can make your images look just like our images if you like. So again, that's in our configure or our help documentation, which is accessible by just opening the tool and going to help, and that'll launch the PDF help file.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jeff, for taking us through the SuperDoor admin tool. And again, if you want to see upcoming events from CTC, check us out on our events page at cadtechnologycenter.com/events.